This week on Brewpeg, we're getting the engine bay organised, ready for the new Cummings to come back. It's with the mechanic as we speak. With little money, lots of support, a dollop of Kiwi ingenuity and good old-fashioned blood, sweat and tears, we're creating a community expedition and research boat built with the help of volunteers, supported and run by crew from around the world, because life is too short not to fight for your dream.
I took a stroll downtown this evening when I heard music echo through the night. The same old songs that I heard the night before. So I started running so I wouldn't be too late. I didn't think that I would ever see your face again, but I was wrong.
So down here you can see it's a bit of a bomb site. This is what it was left like after we pulled the engine and gearbox out of this room. I need this room to be spotless because we need to do a lot of work in here and it's too chaotic to be able to move around easily without crashing over. Some of the jobs I want to tackle. See all this mould and black rubbish and stuff that's sort of sitting underneath the main engine? It's really easy to see it at the moment. Like you can see down there on the sides, it is pretty full on, needs to be cleaned off. The trouble is, this paint is not really crash hot at getting rid of mould, so I'm going to repaint all of this under the engine area. The other side of it is, if you look at the engine beds, there's 40 years of people chopping and changing and putting different ideas in and welding bits of metal in and whatever. I'm going to clean that up. That's just freaks me out. This side's relatively nice. It's just a straight piece of steel. I kind of want to get it back to that on that side over there, so I'm going to have a go at fixing that as well. I also need to clear off this area up in here because I'm going to be mounting our air compressor over there. I've got a bit of a special little thing I'm going to do with the air compressor. I don't want mild steel tanks because in the salt environment they're not going to last, so I'm going to build a stainless tank, a pressure vessel for the air compressor over there. I've got a cool little way of doing that. What else we got? The Kubota over the back there. I need to rotate that 90 degrees and that's going to become our hydraulic pump. It's going to be a diesel power pack basically, so that's going to control all of our hydraulics in the boat. I need to move these fuel filters and I need to move that hot water cylinder. So that hot water cylinder is going. We've got a stainless one that we're going to use, but that's where our main generator is now going to sit. So long story, that all of that stuff that I built for that hot water tank is now going to be gone. We're not going to use it. We've changed the plans because of the GoFundMe. We now have the generator that's our dream generator. So that's what's going in there. Now down here, I need to take this coupling off. So prop shaft is a 4-inch stainless shaft. You can see the front of it up here, and there's a big nut that screws this shaft, basically locks this coupling on. I've got to get that off, and I need to take the coupling itself off, which is probably going to be a bit of a mission. I'm going to need to heat it quite a bit, I'm guessing, and I'm also suspecting that it's going to be pretty well seized on there. Not seized, just incredibly tight because it's a taper fit. So I may have to build something for my 12-ton jack to see if I can use the jack to pull that coupling off the shaft. The first step is basically clearing the chaos that is in this room at the moment. So I have a little trick for that as well. There's often a lot of questions out there about why people would pay a lot of money for Snap-on tools, and there's features that these things have that most tools don't have. For example, this is just a generic flathead screwdriver. There's nothing fancy about it. It doesn't do anything, but when you enable secondary magical feature on the Snap-on tools, this happens. Huzzah! As you can see, quite the difference from the Snap-on enabled cleaning system. What I need to do now is organise my bench so that I can TIG weld this tank, which is going to be sitting in this area of the boat right here. Step 1 to making our engine bay complete. This air compressor is a beautiful little air compressor. It's not big, but it's an absolutely awesome little machine. It'll hold pressure. You turn it off and it'll hold pressure for like 2 weeks, no leaks. Just great little machine. So I want to use this as the basis for my engine room air compressor system, but the tank is not big enough, so we're going to slightly modify it. Now for those that know me, they know that I like long romantic walks on the beach and stainless, so we'll do one of those. This is going to become our new tank. So 2 beer kegs, they are pressure tanks, so they're able to hold pressure. They have a rated PSI of 71 PSI that they're the safe working load is for them, but that's not actually the tank, it's the valve inside. The tanks themselves are thicker metal than what the tank on the compressor over there is, so I have no worries about using these at 100 PSI because I know they're going to be strong enough, but those two combined give us around about 100 litres of capacity. So yeah, let's get those two joined together. When to become one. All right, it's enough of that, Spice Girls. So first off, I need to get rid of this top here. Do the same and get rid of this one here, so we're just left with the pressure vessel itself. Then we've got this valve, the original valve when it was a beer keg, that has to come out. And then I need to join the two of them together. So my plan is to leave one end in, cut some big 100mm holes in there, so we've basically got essentially a structural member. It would almost look like a baffle. It's not going to be a baffle, but it's just to hold pressure in this sort of what's going to be a long tank, and then I'll put the other one up onto it and weld it all the way around. So that's my plan. The other one that gets joined on will have the end cut completely off. So this will still remain in here, but there'll be some big holes for air to transfer through. And that is what the end comes up like, with a little bit of love. I think that's going to work out fine. What I'm thinking, now that I've got my line to cut, I'll trim that there, and it's just off. If you have a look over here, you can see it's just off where it starts to drop off into the radius over here. And the reason I'm thinking that is this one here, I haven't cleaned this up yet, but I might actually use this lip here. See how it drops in? I might see if I can just sit it up against that lip and use that as a locator. Don't know if it's going to work, but I need to check it before I cut that off. So what I need to do is figure out if I can use it as like an alignment spigot. Oh, you know what? You absolutely can. Alright, so I just need to get them true to each other, and then that's a decent tank. I need to cut the reliefs into the top of this one here, polish this one up. This one's already polished up, it's just sitting on a base. But yeah, we're getting there.
Well, we've heard from Carl. It looks like the motor's okay. There's a little bit of stuff going on. We'll give you a little bit of an update. But what's really exciting is they heard this morning that it looks like he doesn't need anything from this. So this means we can strip this down, which is one of the jobs I'm so looking forward to. And we'll scrap it. And do you want to save any of the parts?
Some of them, not a huge amount of them, but some of them.
Yeah. So with my brain injury, my first brain injury, one of 4 that I had, and apparently it's quite normal when you have a brain injury, you lose spatial awareness, and so I kept hitting my head after that, which made it worse. But I haven't welded for a year and a half, so I'm getting my hands dirty today, which I'm really excited about.
So just going to weld these two together now that we've cleaned the ends up and they can be joined. But what I'm thinking, in order to join them, is a couple of blocks of wood just parallel to each other, and we'll sit them in there so that it sits sort of square, and then we should be able to just run like maybe 3 tacks around the whole thing so it sits tight, and then we can get in and TIG it properly. I just need to give it a good clean. I'll just go over and give it a wash.
Beautiful. Until that.
I didn't anticipate that. Here's something we didn't factor in.
Uh-oh. I do have an idea.
Yeah, what's that?
You know the right angle stainless there?
Yeah.
Could you put it on the wood, and that is what it hits, and that's a line?
Oh, yeah. Good idea. Yep. I also don't know how round the barrels are either.
Yeah. Actually, they're just by itself might be okay. If you go right down low, it's going over.
It's going over.
Now it's tinted.
Barrel down. Yeah. Oh, barrel down and all.
Barrel down. They look very clean.
They're clean now.
Yeah, that's going to work.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we let that up, it's going to twist it.
Nice helmet.
Yeah. That's a nice big window, eh?
Yeah. With the brain injury, I've forgotten a few things, so I have to relearn how to weld. I think that's not very good, so...
Looks like there's no gas.
Yeah.
I'll bump it up to 15. It was on about 8. Just try that. He's got the liners out of the motor. He said, look at the erosion in these counterbores. This is the importance of using coolant over dam water. It's standard size now, but we'll need to cut it for oversize. See that corrosion? Wow. So you skim that out, and you bore all of these holes basically slightly bigger, and you put a slightly bigger liner in. It's not set up right.
No, it doesn't feel it, does it?
So let me think about that. Slightly less heat. It's too hard trying to learn with it not working. Yep, that'll do. How's that?
Yeah,
good.
Good,
eh? Yeah.
Okay, going.
Okay. I really like TIG welding in this part of the boat because it's a completely still environment, so you get no issues from wind and everything knocking out your argon from the weld, so you get a really beautiful weld as well. It's also like quiet, so you can really concentrate on what you're doing. Some people worry about the argon building up in this room, but there's a couple of things that keep you safe. Right now, the bung that's in the bottom of the bilge is completely open, so the lowest part of the boat drains out. So any argon that accumulates in this room, it's a big room, but any argon that does accumulate works its way down and goes out the bottom of the boat. I've also got the hatch at the back end of the engine room open, so we've got fresh air coming in, and there's 4 vents around the side of the boat that are normally there to allow air to come in for the main engine to operate. So we've got heaps of air coming in, and we've got air draining out the bottom as well. If ever we need more, we can always plug a vacuum cleaner into that drain at the very bottom of the boat as well. I don't think we're going to need it today. It's only a relatively small amount of welding we have to do. So I think there's a fairly fair and valid question as to why on earth am I building this out of stainless? Air compressed basically is whatever's in the atmosphere squished into a tank. If I'm out at sea, it's going to be salty, humid air that's squished into that tank. Normally tanks, like air compressor tanks, that sort of thing, are mild steel, and compressed air has a lot of moisture in it because it gets hot, so it basically accumulates a lot of moisture, and that's why you have a little drain bung at the bottom of a compressor tank to get rid of that water. So essentially we're going to potentially have seawater or salty water sitting in a bare steel tank, a mild steel tank. So that's not going to last long, that's going to rust out. So by changing the tank to stainless, it doesn't necessarily give us any advantage over the mild steel other than the fact that it won't rust out. Setting it up the way that I have, I've doubled the capacity of the air, which is always a good thing. It basically means that you've got longer per recharge cycle on that compressor, but it takes twice as long to recharge it, so pros and cons. But it's really good for big bursts. If you want, say, an air starter to run, you can give it a wallop of air. We're going to have a great big solid pipe coming out of this, like a 1.5 inch supply pipe going from this tank to our air starter. It'll be solid all the way across the engine room until it gets to the air starter, and then it'll be a small flexi link so that we can allow for vibration. But this allows us to have an air starter by having a big tank like this.
My thoughts have never been clearer. I see what you're doing to me now. They lie, they steal, they fooled us. Deep down I probably knew this. I think I will be holding on to the one thing that I know is stronger. Love is blind and no one's perfect. Platinum seems so shallow, 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 shallow. But you are bright, white gold. They made us lose our focus. The very same hands that formed us. Go build a better tomorrow. For you, I'd make it.
I was hoping for it to be a lot tidier than it is, but it's good enough. Maybe you can see this is a fairly good section, and then down here, there we go, there's a bit of a daggy, messy section. But basically what I'm thinking is I'll give this whole thing a good clean up and a polish up now, and if we've got any holes in that weld, I'll just redo it. So I have put a pinhole in it just there, a little 3mm hole, just to relieve any pressure in case it sort of tries to crumple in when it cools down. Don't want that to happen, so put a little pinhole in it to do that. But I'm also going to use that as the very bottom of the tank, and that'll be my drain. So for now, we'll just let that cool down, and then we'll start polishing it up. What I'm thinking in here is I want to tidy it, because this is the only chance we're going to get for a decade. It's hard to get your hands in to clean underneath, and it gets mouldy under here. And I think there's two things. Partly the paint is the problem there. It's not 2-pack. So we can clean that up and put a good 2-pack on, and it just doesn't get as mouldy. The other side of it is it's hard to get your hands under it because you've got all these sharp edges everywhere. So I want to, if I can, clean that up so that it's tidy, and open up some of these drain holes a little bit bigger and neater, and paint through here, just so that we've got a much nicer engine bay going forward, and I can keep it mould free. Normally I wouldn't care, I'd just press on and get in the water, but now is an opportunity that we weren't going to have, basically.
How much of this mount is still going to be needed?
Well, we use this, and we use the red bit down there.
So the middle bit's actually not...
We don't use any of the middle bit. They've obviously decided at some point that these engine beds don't work. They've cut them because they put a different engine in at some point, wider mounts on.
Oh, so this used to be Caterpillar, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
but the Caterpillar was probably the 4th engine this thing's had. Like, it would have had a few engines over the years. So every time they put a new engine in, they've chopped bits out and they've modified it.
Okay, compromise?
Yep.
How about tidying them up, cut them back,
Yeah.
but leave them there for extra strength? They're too hard for cleaning.
Yeah.
But if you dropped it
bring it in. Yeah,
Yeah, wouldn't that
you
work?
you could go into there all the way along without affecting,
yeah.
without changing anything. It's mainly getting up under the lips because the mould gets up under there and you can't get to it.
Yeah, it's not a great design, is it?
Yeah. I think the paint will help. Like, I think changing the paint will be a big deal because the mould just won't be able to grab on so hard.
Yeah. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I think it's good. I would like to plasma out the holes, the drain holes a bit better.
Oh my god, yeah.
This is looking along the length. You can kind of see the various drain holes as we go. This one here, starting back here, right? They've plasmaed out for a gearbox or something like that, and the drain hole kind of has a big lip, and stuff gets stuck there all the time. This one here, it's not even centered, so let's clean that up. This one, not centered. This one here is a decent size. They've cut a nice big drain hole. And same with the one at the front, nice big drain hole. So these ones work really well, but this is also the easiest part to access. This is under the motor here, and it's impossible to get your hand into it. I'm just going to duplicate it. Like, see how it comes out, say, I don't know, 100 mil. I'll just go 100 mil out here and just clean it up so it's just a nice radius.
It's quite nice and cool in here. Actually, it's the coolest part of the boat, ironically. This room is looking amazing.
Thank you, darling. I've spent many, many hours in here pondering.
And cleaning.
And cleaning.
Yeah.
Pondering and cleaning.
You disappeared in the last few days cleaning. But
I've still got heaps of cleaning underneath all of the floorboards, and you see there's like rubbish to be vacuumed up. And
under that tank's looking pretty shocking, actually.
Feral, yeah. Actually, that's a good point. Under that tank is where the generator, that's the area the new generator is going to sit. I need to make that cleanable, so I need to actually...
Have you shared the news about how we're getting the generator in?
No, you can share the news
about
that.
It's very exciting. So the hot water tank's going out into the storage area out here, and we're just going to bolt it to the wall for now. So that'll be gone. We're going to clean it up, and then the generator we're going to cut a hatch in the back. We're going to cut it out, and we're going to drop that in. But this will be after this is done. The motor is done, and the gearbox is in, and probably even have the electric motor sort of all sorted out and everything. The monitoring system will be back in, everything will be done, and then that'll be happening afterwards. We're also going to rotate my Kubota.
This is Jess's handbag diesel.
This is mine. Yeah, no one's allowed to get rid of this. I love this motor.
Do you want to tell them about what the original genesis of this motor was, where it came from?
Yeah, it was not in a great shape. And it was under a little flax bush, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was walking Mish, our old dog. Dame came home and said, I think I found a little possible motor here going on. So he went over, asked the guys, is this rubbish? And the guy said, yeah, it's rubbish. Oh, I think I've seen the covers for that in the skip or something. Oh, they had them, that's right, they had them by the shed. So we grabbed it, and Dennis, who's just visited for the second time, helped Dame sort of test it, look inside it. It looks like it'll be a goer, but it needs a bit of work. But when we mounted it, we were silly, and we didn't mount it so it's easily accessible. So we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. So this is going to run the hydraulics and an air compressor. So that's going to take a bit of work. In the meantime, it's going to sit there looking real pretty. So very exciting. So sequence of events, right? Very exciting learning how to block and tackle a 600 kilogram motor out through this hatch above my head. Very cool. That's done. What we're going to be doing going forward is we're going to use the gantry and the trolley system. We're going to use that to get the gearbox in. So that's the first thing that's going to come in. Then we're going to get the Get Home electric. That'll come in around the same time as the gearbox. Then we're going to crane the motor in to drop through the top of the roof. So we're going to cut that soft point out that we showed you in the last episode. We're going to get a crane. We're going to rent a crane, and like we did on the first motor, we're going to have that dropped in. And the reason we're doing that is because it's going to be a full motor. It's going to be intact. The one we pulled out had already been stripped down a bit. This one is going to be completely put together. It's heavy and it's tall, and we can't do it with the gantry. And we're going to get those sorted out. Then we'll work on the generator being dropped in the back through the back deck.
And that'll go in through the rear deck gantry crane that we built.
That's right, yeah. But remember, it's just going up on deck. It'll be a forklifted up, and then it's basically moving a metre, and it's getting dropped. We'll get the top welded in, and then we're ready to do all the fitting, the monitoring, the fuel system. Everything gets put together. Just as a little side note, it's a project that's happening on the side. For anyone who doesn't know us very well, we're hoping to run on veget oil, as well as biodiesel, probably some diesel, and will be powered by wind and solar as well as veget oil. but the motor has to be able to use Vigit oil. What we didn't know is Carl was really into that, like who's rebuilding a motor. He's so excited because he understands motors in and out, and these motors particularly, and he's actually helping us set it up so it works for Vigit oil. And Damien told me the other day that it's actually going to be tested with Vigit oil before it comes to us, so we'll actually know that it'll cope. There are some addendums to this. There are some things you have to do on an ongoing basis with maintenance if you're going to run Vigit oil through a mechanically injected motor like this. But we'll talk to you about it later, but very exciting, it's all happening. Damien had his first meeting with a group from Germany who've been doing this with truck motors now for a long time. They're the guys that we talked to even decide whether that was actually a real possibility. Carl and Damien are having a second meeting with the guys this Friday to talk about the nitty-gritty of the motor. So it's actually starting to get some traction, this whole idea. Very exciting. So we'll keep you updated. We'll do episodes on that because it's an interesting side build. But first things first, you're going to build the compressor into the boat. Yep. with your keg.
Yep.
Tank.
Yep.
Have you pressure tested that yet?
Not yet.
You're going to pressure test it inside the boat?
No, I'll do it outside.
Lovely.
Yeah. Using the compressor, before I destroy the compressor, I'm going to pressure test the new compressor tank.
Oh, so you're taking that back out, so you've only brought it in to weld it?
What I need to do is basically, that's where it's going to be mounted, but I need to build the mounts for it, size it up and everything. I've got these little rubber mounts, so I'm going to mount the whole thing on these. They're very soft, so because it's not that heavy, but I don't want it to be noisy every time we start it up and rattle through the whole boat. So I've got some really soft rubber mounts so that we can get that thing mounted properly, safe and quietly. So the process that I need to go through is the tank that I've just put together. I need to mount this, so I'm going to build some stainless mounts using the rubber engine mounts that I showed you before. That'll have the tank be solid into the boat, but at the same time connected by rubber, so therefore going to be quiet when it's running. Once I've got that done, I'll take the whole thing downstairs. I do need to weld some fittings in, so a drain at the bottom, a feed at the top, that sort of thing. Once I've got those in, I can then pressure test the tank. So before I pull my other compressor apart, I'm going to use the other compressor to pressure test this. So 2 steps. One is sort of 5-10 psi, something like that, to look for leaks. So basically soapy water, etc., around the weld that I did and all my fittings. Make sure all the welds for my fittings, etc., are all okay. There's a hole that I blew in the end of it just here when I put the I welded a bolt on the end so that I could have...
So easy to do, eh? Because it's actually not that thick.
Yeah, so I put a bolt on the end just so that I can have something to grab for my earth. And I had the machine set way too hot and I blew a hole in it. So I just need to fix that as well, weld that up. That's easy enough with the TIG. You can do pretty thin metal with that TIG. So once I've got that done, I've pressure tested it using the other compressor. Then I'm going to start pulling the other compressor apart. So I'll slice the tank off the machinery mounts. So you've got your electric motor and you've got the compressor head, and they're all sitting on a steel mount, like a big saddle that sits on top of the compressor tank. I'm going to slice that off the tank, get rid of the old steel tank, and then put all of the mechanics on, basically sitting straight on top of this. So it'll look pretty similar to what the original one did, the only difference being it's got a much bigger tank that's made out of stainless. The reason we're doing a tank that's twice the size of the original is because we eventually want to have air start on the Cummins, on the 855 main engine. And having a big tank means that you've got more air to put through the starter motor so that you can start that engine. It's not a huge deal if you don't have enough air, it's just that you've only got a few seconds to start the motor. Bigger tank means you've got a much longer time period that you can wind in order to start that engine. And if you run out of air, you have to wait until it pressurizes again with your compressor. So that's the main reason why I wanted a bigger tank. It's also the reason I wanted the stainless tank. And then all of the air lines going up to the air start will eventually be large diameter stainless as well. So essentially what I'm trying to do is remove any possibility for rust, rubbish, dirt, grit, etc. going through the starter motor, and by extension through any of our air tools. And one final reason why I'm doing the compressor now and not focusing on more engine related stuff is it's just too damn hard to get this thing in and out when the engine and gearbox is here. It's so much easier to be able to just swing the tank straight out and out the door and bring the whole lot in and not have to factor in having a main engine sitting right in the middle of the room. It's possible to do it with the main engine sitting in the middle of the room, but it's 10 times harder. So that's why I'm taking the opportunity while this is an empty room to just get this build done and then get straight into sorting out the main engine beds and the painting.
So this is about preparation for the motor coming in.
Yeah.
So, we need to get rid of this tank at the back while we can. We need to get the beds sorted out.
And then it's build floorboards at the back, build a floorboard at the front. I'm gonna do the one at the very front of the engine. So I've got to build an aluminium tread plate floorboard for the very front of the engine room that goes across the bilge area. I do have the aluminium to do a floorboard that goes across the back end here, across the propeller shaft, but I'm not going to do that straight away because we're going to be mounting our Get Home electric motor down that end, and I don't know at this stage. I don't quite know how that's going to mount. So there's a few sort of variables that are still to be decided on that.
Are you helping Snoop, are you? While we were at the scrapyard recently, we found this amazing tread plate deal. It's going to need a bit of a clean, but it'll be perfect to replace the boards in the engine bay. No, come away. Snoop, come here, babe. Come here. Good boy. Just stay with me. He can actually cope by himself without your help, believe it or not.
Thanks, mate. Didn't actually need it, but thanks anyway.
Stay here, Snoop. You know the cat's going to love them too.
Yeah.
Alright, some shopping this morning.
Alright, come on, dog. Okay, I'm starting to get there. This is the makings of my mount. I need to put some brackets on the side so that it's nice and stiff, but at the moment it's just sort of sitting there. And I'm starting to do one at the back. The back one, I'm running out of room, so I'm going to be doing a slightly different design. It'll be flat bar with some sort of gussets and things. But this one here, this is what it looks like when the tank's gone. So you can see it's pretty simple sort of design. And then I was sort of thinking of some sort of like, you know, gusseting type thing at the back. I'll do a similar sort of arrangement, so like sort of maybe flat bar gussets or something along those lines. I haven't got the mounts, the rubber mounts in that rear one yet. I've got yet to do that. Just basically working on trying to get the angles right at this stage. I've made this little cardboard template. This is going to be the bracket that holds the front of the compressor. So just a nice, easy sort of relief that I'm going to cut in there and weld that onto the compressor itself, and then this flat edge here will go straight onto that box section bar that's bolted onto the rubber mounts. Get this done, and then we can start working on that back mount.
Just a silhouette in flashing light, moving like a cat on the floor, shining like a falling star. One thing that I know is stronger. Love is blind and no one's perfect. Time seems so shallow, 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 shallow. But you are bright white gold.
There we go. A little bit of flapper, a little bit of grinding.
If you by my side, I'm not worried. I think we'll be able to find ourselves again. Blank expressions, empty words. Nothing can keep me away from you. I think I will be holding on to the one thing that I know is stronger. Love is blind and no one told us. Platinum seems so shallow, 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 shallow.
So this is the mount system. You can see I've got basically a bracket at the front that will hold this thing from rocking side to side. I am going to put a duplicate of that at the very back, but the back one, what I wanted to show you is you can see the distance between the back one. It's quite small, maybe, I don't know, 2 inches, 50 mil. and the distance between the bottom of the tank on this one here is quite tall, probably 150 mil, 6 inches, something like that. So the reason I've done that is to try and keep that tank as flat as I can. So my plan is basically tack the tank onto those mounts, and then I'll take everything outside and weld it up properly. But I'm going to, and I'll also do the pressure testing out there, but I'm going to create the mount at the back outside. I just need to tack it on so that it's in the right orientation. Right, they're now tacked in, so we'll take this tank outside and we'll start welding it up properly out there. Clear.
It's been pretty hot weather with lots of humidity and storms in the evening, like this one.
Wow.
Wow, that was amazing.
Please tell me you're recording.
I was, yeah. Wow.
Oh yeah. I want to add in a fitting. It allows essentially a ball valve to drain the tank. I'm going to be putting that right there because that's pretty much the lowest part of the tank. So this 1/2 inch or 13mm drill isn't big enough to have this fall through, and I want that like that on purpose because I don't want this to be sticking through and then have a lip that the water has to get over. I want it to basically be as flat as I can, so I'm going to essentially be welding this on the outside. Got a little pilot hole at the moment, just need to bop through this 13mm and then we can weld that on as well. Come on, Chuck. Done. Now, I won't be welding this on straight away because I need to clean all the rubbish that I just put in there from drilling. So I'm going to leave this for now, give it a really good wash out, and then I'm going to weld this all in there. I'm going to use water to basically flush out the rubbish. That's running like a bag of shit. Come on. There's no need for this. Right, well the grinder is going to make a lovely job of that. God almighty. So I'm struggling to get the fittings needed to connect this Nitto fitting for an airline into the air compressor so that I can pressure test it. But I have come up with a plan. This monstrosity, it's a whole bunch of fittings basically screwed together, and that's going to allow me to connect an airline onto this fitting. I'm going to weld this fitting into the tank, and that allows me to then put a gauge on that or whatever later. It'll just be essentially a spare port, but I'll put it in a place that I can actually use it for something later on. This is unfortunately going to spray rubbish back inside the tank, which I've just cleaned. Definitely too small. So last night, after the camera ran out of batteries, I've welded this 3/4 inch fitting in, and then I've also welded in this 3/8 fitting. So this is going to be my water drain. The tank's sitting not how it normally will. It will be tipped slightly this way. This is eventually going to be an air gauge in here just to tell me what pressure I've got running inside the tank. But for now, it's actually going to be my fill port for air pressure. So I'm going to use my other compressor to basically pressurise this tank with air. I want to find out if there's any leaks, so I'm only doing a relatively low pressure test, probably 10 psi, something like that. And because I don't have a ball valve on here and I don't have a gauge on here, I'm just going to use the regulated air pressure on the other compressor that's sitting on the ute at the moment. I'm going to pressurise it up using regulated air pressure to about 10 psi, nothing too dramatic. And then I'm going to go around and have a real good check of all my welds to make sure everything's honky-dory. So on this compressor here, I'm taking the whole top part of this off, all the mechanical section, getting rid of the tank itself. and I'm going to be welding this part onto the new tank out the back of the boat there. But we do have a fitting just down in there and another fitting just over here. I believe they're 1/2 inch BSP pipe sockets. I've got a couple of them to weld in, but I'm not going to be able to weld them in before I can pressure test this and assemble it. I'm just going to have to do a bloody good weld and make sure I don't have any leaks. It's pretty hard to guesstimate if you're going to have any leaks with your welds when you're doing pressure vessels. But I have done quite a few of these now with sandblaster modifications and things like that, so I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to do it. I reckon I've got about a 95% chance of getting it without any leaks the first time round. And if I do have leaks, I can easily fix it up with my TIG welder. If you're curious, these tanks hold 850 psi before they reach their burst pressure. There's a link in the description to a lab test that goes into the details. We should be pretty safe with our 120 psi max. Alright, here we go. Soapy water. Bit of air pressure, not much. I can crush the pipe myself. It's only 20 psi at most, 10 psi, something like that. I've got my safety valve open, so this is going to be my water drain eventually, but this for now is my safety valve. I've got that open, so shouldn't really accumulate any pressure. Let's just put it in and fill her up. Okay. So you can see down here just how little pressure there actually is. Now that I'm happy it's actually working and going in, I'm just going to close off the safety valve. I think it may leak here. Yeah, look. So I haven't got thread tape in these joints here, so these will bubble. I'm not worried about that. I'm looking at the welds. I want to make sure the welds have got nothing weird going on. The tank's been sitting in the sun, so I'm spraying this water on and it's steaming off. Just a bit of an air pressure check. Going to keep that open because it's getting a bit higher than I want. Okay, let me show you one of the leaks. What we're looking for is bubbles creeping out of these welds. Ah, there we go. Look at that. You can see that it's starting to come out of there. Wasn't doing it at very low pressures, but it's doing it at whatever pressure's in there now, maybe 30 psi, it's doing it now. I plan to clean this up with a flapper wheel a bit later on. Same deal over here. Let me show you those welds I just put on. So just added a little bit more. I wasn't satisfied that the TIG was sort of deep enough, and then here the TIG was a wee bit shallow, so I've sort of gone right over the whole thing. Might look a little bit manky and ugly and wide, but I don't think that's ever going to fall apart. Right, previously our leak was in this area here and also at the front here. Both of those have now been solved, so let's put a little bit of pressure in. Right, nothing. Haha, new leak. Awesome, let's fix that. Sitting at 50 psi and I can't find any leaks anywhere anymore. So time to put it up to full pressure and see what it behaves like. That's sitting at 120 psi. Yep, I give that a pass. Alright, now that I'm happy with that, it's time to get that compressor, the mechanics of it, mounted on top of this stainless tank. That's what I'm trying to avoid, all that rust and rubbish that accumulates in a steel tank that you can't really avoid because it's very difficult to paint inside that tank and stop that rust. So by having the stainless, I'm hoping to get probably about maybe a 95% reduction in rust, because the only place it can come from is inside the actual mechanical components itself. There's only a couple of places where this whole mechanical section connects to the tank. It's welded onto this frame down here, so the frame itself, once you unpick those welds, should come up. But before you do that, you've got to disconnect the inlet fitting over here, so it comes from the two compressor heads down into the tank via this fitting here. There's also a little copper tube here that goes up into the regulator, and then this end here is where the air leaves the tank and goes off to your air tools or whatever. So this is where your regulator and so on sits. So I'm going to weld in a new stainless version of this front end here, so we can essentially screw all of this straight back into the original threaded piece that goes at this end of the tank. And then I'm also going to weld in a stainless copy of this end here into the stainless tank as well. So I need to take the mechanism off so that I can then unpick these welds and lift this whole piece in one unit off this compressor. Underneath the metal bracket that those parts are basically bolted to, that steel frame, as well as the tank here, you can see they just don't paint it because you can't get to it. It's really hard to get to when it's all assembled. And this compressor is less than 12 months old. It's been pretty much just sitting in atmosphere that we expect around the boat. If anything, it's going to get worse than what we are in the yard when we're at sea. So you can sort of see how fast things rust if you can't protect them with paint. The inside of the tank will be just as bad, if not worse actually. When they built this part, they put this regulator into a mild steel socket. I'm pretty sure this regulator, although it looks like it's die-cast aluminium, I'm pretty sure it's made entirely from thread locker, because this thing is absolutely not coming off without completely destroying the aluminium. This is the original setup on the steel compressor. We've got our on-off switch, pressure regulator. We've got the actual regulator itself where you can control how much pressure you got. You got regulated air pressure out and tank pressure, and then you've got two Nitto fittings, quick disconnect Nitto fittings, and a safety blow-off safety valve here, so if it gets over-pressured it'll just let that air pressure go. This whole thing is on like a die-cast aluminium manifold, and it's connected to a steel half-inch socket. These things pretty much weld themselves together. I think they're held in with like an Araldite or something like that. Either way, there's no way I'm going to be able to separate these without breaking the weak sintered aluminium. So I've built a bit of a beast. Let me show you what I've made. So I've got new components for everything, but I've got basically a new on-off regulator switch. These here are locking Nitto fittings, but they're plastic. They're essentially commercial grade hard plastic, so they're not going to rust in the boat. We've also got another one over here, so this is unregulated. This is just whatever the pressure in here is going to be coming out here. So if it's 120 here, it's going to be 120 here. This one here is regulated via this air-water separator, or oil separator as well. So this can basically, by dialing this up or down, we can regulate the pressure to whatever we want and send out, say, 70 psi. Even if the tank's at 100 and whatever, we can send out whatever our regulated pressure is out this Nitto fitting. Connected via relatively strong, it's a bit of a beast of a contraption, but that was the only way that we could actually get all of the fittings we needed to get it down to, I think that was quarter inch or something like that, and this is 3/4, so it's a wee bit of a monstrosity, but it works and it'll be fine. And then a new safety valve over here. All of this gear is 10 times better than the original stuff that we're replacing, so I think we're going to end up with a much better setup and much better compressor overall. So I've just welded in the last few fittings. So this one here is the main feed to the tank, so when this unit compresses the air, comes out this line here through this check valve and basically sits in that orientation, but it goes down and into the tank here. And then I've also added this one here, which is an 1.25" fitting, so this is going to be for our air start. For now, we're just going to use a lid and cap that off like that. So we'll seal that up, and that's not going to be doing anything for a while until we get the air start going, but that gives us a connection so that we can have large capacity air volume belting down into that air starter. Given that this is stainless, leaving it looking like that just will not do. That's looking quite a bit tidier, nice and polished up. That'll do. Right, it's time to start getting this fitted to the kegs. I have to do a couple of modifications to these rails right down low here. I have to put some bumps in it so that will sit nicely on the bumps that are on these kegs here. I've removed the grate from the fan belt for this, because where this is going to be mounted in the boat, this fan belt is going to be hard up against something. I think there's going to be low chance of somebody getting their hands caught in it, and with the grill on, I physically can't change the belt. So for future ease of repairs, I've basically got rid of the cover and I'm going to rely on where it's located to protect this area. If you see here, you've got these bumps in the actual tank itself. I need to do something like that, fairly biggish radius, to just clear it so that I can weld the flat here. And I'll clean all that up with the grinder before I weld it, but I'll weld these flat areas here onto the tank. But I just need this to sit right down. That'll be fine, I think. I don't think that's going to come off. I do need to paint that, so I have given it a rough up, because I can't sandblast it, but I have given it a rough up so that I can put some 2-pack on. But I thought I'd give you a comparison of the two tanks. End for end, it's substantially larger than the new stainless one. I think that's going to do us quite well on the boat.
Stroll downtown this evening when I heard music echo through the night. The same old songs that I heard the night before, so I started running.
This gives you an idea of how noisy that compressor is. I'm currently in the freezer room, this is the door going into the engine room. The machine's running. When you open the door, pretty good when you're outside in the boat. There's just not a lot of noise from this. I think those mounts work really well. They are probably a bit soft, so I think I need to change them for harder mounts. But overall, that seems to be working pretty awesome. So overall, it works a treat. I'm really happy with it. There's a couple of things I need to fix. There's an air leak on the seal there that I need to fix. That's just a case of put a bit more goo in there and crank it up a bit tighter. It'll be fine. It's probably me just not doing it up tight in the first place. There's a reason I didn't do it up tight, because I did it when it was in place here on the mount. They're a bit flimsy. And I also realised that the rear mount hasn't got its gussets on in this scene, so the rear mount itself is actually flexing way too much. That's going to be fixed in the next few days. It'll be done by the time you're watching this episode. So when I bought those rubber mounts, I went for the softest possible mount that I could. And I think they're too soft, so I need to obviously make that a bit sturdier. That's not going to last in a seaway, they're going to break after a while. But other than that, I'm really happy with that. Once I change those mounts, I think this is going to be awesome. There is one thing that I didn't realise. When I welded this bracket on, it's ever so slightly off to the side, so I don't know if you can see it, but it's not perfectly square vertical. So I'm going to modify the mount slightly. I'll put slightly lower mounts on one side, and I'll put a spacer and lift the outside up a little bit so it just rocks it back over. It's not really going to make any difference in terms of function, but yeah, just a bit of a funny thing when I put it together. But it all seems to be working really well. I'm pleased with all this gear. This seems to be working nice. I will mount this gauge in the tank itself, but other than that I'm really happy with that. I think it's come up beautiful.
So we can keep on dancing. I didn't think that I would ever see your face again, but I